Okay, we're live. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. And we're going to start off with a little video I ran across today. And I'm going to try my hand at sharing the screen. So people at home are going to see my desktop, which is going to be, for a second, this little video. Okay. Which is a... Do you want to see this? You won't be in the video. Okay. Okay. Here we go.
Playing his violin just outside Washington D.C. Metro Station.
Here, I want to start it over. I'm trying to get it to come all the way to the beginning. There we go.
Playing his violin just outside Washington D.C. Metro Station. He had a cap on. It was quite unassuming. He was just wearing normal busker clothes. He was playing one of the most expensive violins ever, and some of the most beautifully composed music from the most talented artists and talented composers. The funny thing, 1,097 people walked past and barely anyone noticed it, barely anyone really connected, barely anyone was really engaged. In just under an hour, he'd accrued about just over $30, and that's not a bad amount for a busker, but the fascinating thing was that just a week before, he'd sold out an arena for $100 per seat. This was actually a social experiment conducted by the Washington Post, which showed, do we miss beauty when we see it unexpectedly? Are we not able to observe beauty, observe talent? Is it that we miss the most amazing things in the world just because we don't see them on television, or they're not presented to us in a certain format or in a certain package or in a certain box? I believe you should focus your life on observing the little things, because one day you'll look back and realize they were the big things. We miss the sparks of brilliance. We miss the joys of nature. We miss the blooming of flowers. We miss all of these sensations. Reducing our pace of life doesn't mean becoming slower or less ambitious. It actually means that we take out more time to regenerate, rejuvenate, and re-energize ourselves. And the challenge is that we often confuse the noise of our ego with the voice of intuition. But actually, the more we tune out of the space we're in, we can tune into that intuition. We can actually find how we can be guided and navigate life, because big egos have little ears. And that means that we can't hear properly. Because the truth is, everything has beauty, everything has life, everything has energy, but we just don't have the eyes to see it. We don't have the eyes to perceive it. We don't have the eyes to appreciate it, but we can have those. We can actually develop insight. We can actually develop new ways of looking at things simply by becoming more attentive, simply by becoming more mindful, simply by becoming better observers of reality rather than participants.
So that video has gotten...
There was a busker playing his
views, which is kind of hopeful, right? Okay, so I will stop the screen sharing. All right. So what do you guys think of that? He says we can become better observers of reality. How would we do that? How would we become better observers of reality?
I mean, the point he made about, I'm not sure I totally understood it, about having, we let our ego kind of shove our intuition aside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I know what the words mean, but I don't totally understand what he means by that.
Anyone else interested in that?
I like what
The
he said.
difference between ego and intuition?
Right. Big egos have little ears.
What's that mean?
Well, I think it just means because you're so focused on yourself that you can't hear what's going around you or see what's going on.
Yeah, so if we're self-focused, if we're going through life trying to figure out how to get more of what I want and less of what I don't want, we can be very narrowly focused. Right? Because we're looking for things we recognize as want or don't want. And what happens to all the rest of it? The stuff that doesn't make it into our radar or make it onto our radar screen as want it, don't want it.
Just gets discarded.
It doesn't even exist. Right? That, what's they call that? Selection bias or selectivity. I think there's a couple different ways that's referred to, but the fact that we find what we expect to find. There's this really.
That's what you only want to hear.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Normalcy bias? It's just a term I forgot.
I think it's selection bias. There's another word for it too. A really good demonstration of that is there's a video. You can find it online. Teachers use it in their classrooms all the time, where people are passing a ball between. Have you seen it?
I've seen that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, did you see it the first time?
Barely. I did. I did
Yeah.
catch one of
Yeah.
the other things.
I
I don't
never-
want to spoil it, but yeah, I did. But I
never.
was kind of primed for it because when they say you have to watch it, I was
Yeah.
like, okay, this something's going to happen.
So correctly primed, the teacher says, you're going to count how many times the ball passes hands. And by the way, men are better at this than women. Right?
That I didn't. Okay.
Or something like that, right? We're going to check and
Gotta
see.
get you
Right.
on track. Yeah.
Hyper-focused on counting. Yeah. I don't want to ruin it if
Right,
you guys
it's-
haven't seen it.
Yeah. It's really good.
I can send you the link to the video. Yeah, let me write that down. But it's such an excellent example of, and I think there are out in the world, there have been lots of real documented experiments, like in education, where they tell teachers, oh, you're going to get this group of kids, and by the way, this one and this one and this one, watch out, right? And randomly assign that. And lo and behold, the teachers treat those kids as though the information they received about them is true, and those kids start to respond just like they're expected to respond. Right? The power of expectation. Yeah. Let's send Sue and Thomas. I remember people's stories, but I'm worse at the names. Isn't that something? Yeah. My husband did this one in his classroom with the undergraduate first year engineering students, and that was really interesting. Yeah. So our windows are much smaller if we're not good at observing. And we could say that it's not really our fault, because we have a ton of conditioning, right? Our brains aren't limitless in the amount of data that they can hold. So there are all these little shortcuts, right? They call it heuristics, where we don't have to relearn how to fry an egg or tie your shoes, or, right? Every time I encounter you, I don't have to relearn everything about you, right? In our meeting, I see you, and in my head, there's carried this history, right?
Not my name.
Right. The problem is that we sometimes operate as though the shortcut is the present, right? Everything we know about, so for instance, everything I know about you means I don't need to know anything about how you're doing right now. I can predict what's going on with you. I don't really have to be with you here right now because I already know you, right? Just like when the guy's playing the expensive violin in the subway, right? Nobody's going to stop because, you know, we've seen people hanging out here playing for money before, right? It's not, and I don't really expect to find a concert musician or something that I should stop and appreciate on my way to the train in the morning, right? I'm hyper focused on train. I know what time I need to be there, right? I'm about getting on this train. I'm not about seeing beauty. So then how many times are we on our way somewhere, driving, walking, doesn't matter where we're on our way to. And if I'm hyper focused on where I'm going, how much of my day am I closed off to beauty? Right? Maybe at work, I'm sitting at a desk, but I'm still driving, right? Driving, right? Are you the driver or are you in the back seat? Right? But if you're hyper focused on where you're headed, how likely are you to see anything else that might be available? Right? And we're all working harder at getting more efficient and more driven, right? So how likely is it we're going to see more beauty if we're getting even more focused and adding more things to the list and doing more faster? And is that how we want to live? Your story is making me think about, right? You know, the little things, right? The value in the enjoyment of music, right? And living a life that didn't really require a whole lot of stuff, right? You needed your instrument, right? Place to crash. Yeah. 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 And so when he asks the question about whether we can see the beauty or how much we're missing, I think he's really on to something in that, you know, what we're all doing here this evening is trying to get better at being in that observing place, right? Observing, but not foreclosing opportunity. Like I'm observing, but I'm not saying I already know what I'm going to see. I remember I used to go to these really boring meetings at work, and I would find, to entertain myself, I'd be counting the grammatical mistakes of the speaker, or depending on who was the who's leading the meeting, or the errors in the presentation, like the spelling mistakes, or the ridiculousness of the proposal, or entertain myself with the ridiculousness of nobody in the room being willing to challenge the speaker, and so it didn't feel like anything real was happening. And I realized that after some point that was really not helping me participate in the meetings or be anything like helpful or productive. And so I switched this. Someone had suggested to me, and I had started to consider and try out this idea of, I'm going to find one pearl, right? And whatever the endeavor is, whether it's having lunch with somebody who's asked to learn about my job, or being in a meeting, right? Or going to some family event, or right, something I might not particularly want to do. I'm going to find one pearl, right? So being on the lookout for something positive made it so that I actually could see it. Whereas when all of my attention was focused on how much I disliked or wasn't going to like the experience that I was going to have, that was all I came away with. Was I found lots of stuff to dislike. But it's really interesting how when I focused, sometimes I'd have even more than one pearl from an experience. And when I would have those experiences of, I'm going to come away with the one thing, and I would write it down, like almost like I have to document this because I can't believe it's actually here. And it would always be really significant, like not made up, hokey, real. I would find something real every single time.
So it would just come to you. It wouldn't be like you're going into a meeting and you've already got an idea of what you're going to look for.
Nope. Just I'm going to be open. I'm going to be open. And so I want to circle back because I got a little bit off track with the not our fault piece. Are you guys curious about how that's to some extent outside of our control until we become aware of it? So our brain has this capacity only to be able to focus on one thing at a time. And I was listening to a webinar by a bunch of trauma therapists, trauma experts one time, and Bessel van der Kolk, one of my favorite, he's one of the gurus in the field of trauma. He was talking about this part of the brain that can only either experience or analyze. It's like there's a part of the brain that senses our interior, our inner world. Generally, I think the insula is credited with that function, the ability to sense ourselves kind of from the inside. And that, as soon as we sense something that's happening inside of us, and then we try to describe it, explain it, or analyze it, the door on the flow, the stream of information for sensing, slams shut. So as soon as we begin to describe or analyze, we're no longer experiencing, just because of the fact we can only do one of those things at a time. And then if we stop, check, the stream can flow again, and we can experience, oh, here's tightness, or there's ease, or oh, I feel a little anxious, or oh, ooh, I'm warm, or miffed, or impatient, or bored, or restless, or right. We're sensing our interior, but as soon as something else comes in and says, "Ooh, that I shouldn't be doing that," we're not actually experiencing it anymore. In that moment when we stop to judge, analyze, or explain it, we're no longer in the experiencing function. So there's this back and forth. But most of the time, we are staying on the side of describing, analyzing, judging, right? Explaining the stream to ourselves. In fact, the commentator in the head barely stops long enough to actually examine whether it's accurate about the stream of experience. That's almost wholly the foundation of the work that I do with my clients, is having them pause long enough to sense what's actually happening. Like, what emotion is that, and what is the physical sensation that goes along with that? Or what's the impulse? Is it like, right? Or I want to run away, right? Or is it, right? Otherwise, the disconnection from what's actually happening, what's really happening inside of them, it stays. The disconnection remains. And all the mind keeps doing is making assumptions about, oh, right, it's terrible, I don't want to feel that, without even actually having felt into it. Instead, it's just constriction. I don't want to feel that. No idea what's underneath the constriction. Right? And we do that about lots of things and lots of people. Right? We already know I'm not going to enjoy the time with mother-in-law, or right, or my kid who's acting up, or the meeting, right, the talk I have to have with the boss or coworker or employee, right? I already know I'm going to like it or not like it.
So how do you talk yourself out of that?
Well, becoming conscious that that's happening and choosing, right? When we can stay with the observing function, choosing, I'm going to stay there. What if, right? Conducting the experiment. What if I just be with whatever is and see what happens? What if I don't prejudge? Right? A true experiment, because experiments, the outcomes of experiments are always altered by expectation. That has been proven, right? That's why it's so hard to conduct unbiased research, because expectation affects the outcome. And what if we stayed in beginner's mind, right? That's that whole Zen thing, beginner's mind. If we stay in I don't know, right? My experience of this person is that they're obnoxious and that they're constantly irritating me. But what if today I go into this interaction saying, I don't know what it'll be like today, instead of I know they're going to say something that I'm just going to be like, right? What if instead I'm completely open to a new possibility? Right? Because in that, right, just like the school kids, if we're open, other people and the situations have the opportunity to be different and have us see it. Otherwise, they can be different all day long and we won't see it. Isn't that the reason people can't stand to go home? Right? You go home, first time back home from college, or right, or maybe if your parents live far away, every time you go back home, doesn't matter how old you are, they're still treating you like the kid you remember being but no longer are, right? Yeah. And then we start acting like that, right? That's the best part of all. We start feeling and acting like the kid. Possibility shut down. There's no opportunity for anything different to happen. So if we can be smarter than our brains, we are the most evolved primates. We have this, right? Judgment, decision-making, impulse control. Underdeveloped in a few of us, right? Especially the more teenaged of us, right? But all joking aside, that part of our brain needs some support to develop. Trauma can interfere with the development of this part of our brain, right? Most people will, by the end of college, develop that tolerance for ambiguity, right? The capacity to see gray instead of everything is black and white, right? But I'm sure you all know people who haven't achieved that, right? Can't do that. Can't see gray, shades of gray. Yeah. So our work, right, and our pleasure sometimes is our meditation practice that helps us be able to, it's like that's our training, to be able to stay in the observing place long enough to witness, to have an experience that's different. Right? What happens if I have an experience of boredom while I'm on the cushion and I don't do what I usually do? Whatever that is, sleep, disconnect, judge self. Right? What if instead I just have a full experience of boredom? Right? And what does it do? Right? Watching, oh, it seems like boredom. How does the body experience boredom? And what happens next? Maybe boredom becomes bliss. Maybe boredom becomes, oh, it's quiet. Finally, it's quiet. Right? But we don't know unless we investigate. Unless we don't rush to say, good, bad. Right? Like our history has taught us. Right off the bat, there's good, bad. We are investigating for ourselves these notions of good or bad. Okay. So let's take a little break and then we'll come back and have our meditation. And to avoid my errors of not remembering to turn the mic back on, if anybody needs to talk to me before we start the meditation, we'll step outside.
I did have a time with Sharon Woods taking a walk,
Uh-huh.
and you're kind of watching the ground,
Uh-huh.
and something went by me so close that it actually went like that,
Uh-huh.
and I looked, and it was an owl.
Wow.
And he got in the tree, and he's like huge, and he was like just on the edge of the path.
I had the exact same thing happen at Sharon Woods.
He was huge, and I was standing there watching him, and people would go by, and I go, "There's a big owl," and they go, "Yeah," and get cold. How could you not stop?
We came down. It's that mile-long loop, and where you come down, and you make this turn, and there's a kind of an open area, and then you're going up the hill, and the swamp is up here. And we're going up the hill, and I just had this feeling. I'm like, something's looking at us, and I go, Nancy, stop. And there's a branch that goes over the path, and I looked up, and it was a big brown hoot owl, and he's just sitting there looking at us, and then he flew off.
Yeah.
Makes me wonder if he had fledglings on the ground somewhere nearby, or because sometimes that can happen.
I know I went on a night hike with my son. It was like one of his scout things in the winter, and they do those sponsored hikes. And the naturalist had basically hoot owl sounds on an iPhone, and she's playing it through a megaphone.
Oh my God.
And she got the thing to answer her back.
Oh, that's cool.
Wow.
She's trying to get it to show up, but she's playing. She's like, I don't think it's gonna work. And way off in the deep, you're, and we're like, yeah.
Oh,
That-
cool.
We did that. He made the sound himself,
That's it.
and he, got an answer. It was really cool.
Wow.
But actually, I mean, just like walking around my neighborhood on the streets I've been on 1,000 times, and I'll walk and I'll go, man, look at that oak tree. That tree is huge. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. And I'm like,
Yeah.
seen it 1,000 times and never really seen it.
Seen it. Yeah. Yeah, I've done the same thing. And so I think those moments don't have to be restricted to natural beauty, right? Out in the woods or in nature settings. I think we can see them in human interactions, in really simple, right? The little things in life, simple pleasures. I mean, it might sound silly, but like, a quiet moment with a cup of tea, or right, our favorite food, right? A really good meal, appreciation of our own capacity, right, for love or of physical strength, or just so every now and then, you learn about something amazing about the human brain or the human body, or like how amazingly we're put together, how amazingly adaptable we are. In the somatic experiencing trainings, the second year, we go through every catastrophic incident that can happen to a human. And, by the end of that year, if the teacher says so, anybody in here who hasn't experienced at least one, there's no one who can raise their hand. Right? We all, human beings, are just amazing. And the things that they can survive and adapt to, really amazing. And that's all of us. And I think we forget about that. Yeah. So for practice this evening, what kind of lighting would you guys like? Do you want the lamps out? We've got a lot of daylight out there.
So. That's what
Okay.
I wrote.
All right. I'm hoping that my phone is charged, because hopefully we have enough to get through meditation. My replacement phone is acting up, and so now I don't know if it's a refurbished dud or what the case is. But I think I turned off GPS, so I think we'll have enough juice to get through a 24-minute meditation. Mm-hmm. 24 minutes sound okay? Mm-hmm. All right. All right. So just let yourself kind of settle into your chair, like sink into your chair. Feeling the support, right? The pushback from gravity that comes through the chair, comes through the ground, as the sensation of solid ground underfoot. And as you are perhaps at the end of a busy day, noticing anything like pleasure or support that your body receives from this sensation of solid ground through the chair or underfoot. And seeing if you can soak up a little bit of that sensation if you like. And sometimes if you hang out there for a moment with the sensation of yourself there in the chair, you can start to feel that heaviness and feel that sort of landing, greater awareness of gravity, feeling more firmly planted in your seat. Even just a tiny bit more firmly planted in your seat, and letting yourself from that place of being firmly planted, let your attention turn to noticing the top of your head. Remembering that your only job is to notice. You're just letting your attention rest there at the top of your head, noticing whatever sensations are there or not there. And letting yourself be with the rest of your head, face, the sides of your head, including your ears and temples, the back of your head and back of your neck. Just noticing what happens as you include the rest of your head in that space of awareness. Letting yourself register any areas of discomfort or tension or sensation that draws your notice. Letting yourself rest there for a moment. And you can play with any discomfort or tension in ways that you've learned about before. So relaxing the tongue, letting the ears drop, or breathing in and out of any area of discomfort. Giving it space. And staying open to noticing what happens after you soften the tongue or the eyes, or even make a simple request for a little bit of ease in some discomfort. And shifting your attention now for a moment to any area that didn't draw your attention the first time. Just taking note of what seems to be quiet in the head or neck or face. And then letting your attention gently drop down to begin noticing the core of your body, right? Your entire torso, from your throat all the way down to your hips, supporting you in the chair. And you might want to scan first down the front, noticing throat, chest or heart area. And diaphragm, belly, lower abdomen. And if you like, you can experiment with softening or releasing the belly, and imagining a loosening of the armor in front of the heart, that muscular armor. And then giving the back side of your torso a scan, noticing shoulders, upper back, space between the shoulder blades, and then the middle of your back and lower back. Seeing if you can let yourself note any areas of discomfort without getting too involved in judging the discomfort. Just letting yourself notice in as friendly a way as you can, even if that means just keeping your distance. And then also letting yourself notice any areas in your torso, front or back, where your attention seems to not go or not automatically take notice of. And just see if you can be curious about that for a moment. Areas where nothing seems to be happening. That's that thing we've been talking about this evening. How our attention seems to not go where nothing interesting seems to be happening. So you're just practicing letting attention go there right now for a moment. And then finally, gently preparing to shift your attention to notice arms and legs, hands and feet. Maybe first noticing the connection, right? The connecting points, where arms connect to the torso, where legs connect to the torso. And then checking to see what the experience of your arms and legs is in this moment. And we can look for things like tingling, vibration, spaciousness or flow, or other subjective descriptions like restlessness or achiness, or any other kind of discomfort. Or heat or cold. And you're just letting yourself notice your experience of your arms and legs. And then gently preparing to follow your attention as it moves to find the place where breathing seems to be happening. From wherever it seemed to be resting, your attention is going to move toward, right, in this curious way, like you don't already know where breathing is coming from. Letting attention go to where it seems to be happening most prominently. Sensation of breathing in and breathing out. And can you observe your breath without changing it or without conscious intention to change it? It might change as you watch. Focusing on whatever part you feel drawn to. So the sensation of air moving at the nose or throat, rising or falling of chest, belly, shoulders. Or you might be interested in the space in between the breaths, the space at the end of the out breath. Tiny space at the end of the in breath. Almost imperceptible. And resting in this awareness of your breath, which is happening totally in the present, completely and utterly in the present moment. See if you can be curious about other things that are happening purely in the present moment, alongside breathing. Might be sounds, or phenomena inside of you, perceptual, right? Like it, don't like it. It's going well, not going well. Thoughts, emotions, discomfort, physical sensations. All of the senses receiving information, taste, sight, smell, temperature. Seeing if you can let attention go where it is interested without getting too caught up in or stuck. And evaluating where it went. Can you keep noticing? Even when you find things you don't care for, can you keep noticing? Can you be curious? Or if you find things you like that feel good, can you not get stuck there? And keep noticing from moment to moment your experience. And you can ask the question, what happens if I allow everything to be as it is in this moment? So that means even what you experience and how you experience it. So perhaps if your response to what your experience is I don't like it, or I'm not interested, can that be okay? Can you stay for that? Can you not leave that out of your experience? And you're checking, this is an experiment. Right? Is awareness big enough to hold all of it and leave nothing out? No matter what is occurring. Can it all be allowed? Is it possible to not be in opposition to anything in the present moment? To have no argument with life for this short period of time you've set aside? And what is the experience of that? What happens when you allow everything to be as it is, when you have no argument in any moment? Or even if you can only drop the argument with life for a moment, what's that like? And just taking 2 more minutes now as we reach the end of this meditation. Last chance to fully drop in, to fully inhabit your being and not be in conflict with the present moment. To experience just a little bit more of that. Rest there for a little bit longer. To savor. Letting yourself rest in and savor stillness. And quiet. Noticing the timelessness of it. And then gently preparing to shift from your meditation state. Feeling some energy in your arms and legs. And offering gentle movement to fingers and toes. Taking as much time as you need to transition from your meditation. And maybe just take a moment to feel the shared field, right? This energetic field we've created here. It was so nice to be with you this evening. Namaste. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.